I just did what Mr. Rowland did. He stood up, so I'm standing up.
I want to call to order a special session of the Bossier Parish School Board for Tuesday, March 17th, 2020. Item 1 point, well, we'll do some prayer requests by Superintendent Downey.
Thank you, President Bamberg. I think the topic that's on all our minds currently is COVID-19, so please pray for our nation, our state, and our parish. Also, Bo Meeks continues to recover, making steady, solid progress, and Wendy Hendricks at Stockwell has struggled with some health issues and is currently hospitalized. If you remember, she was the one going through chemotherapy treatment, so please keep her and others in your prayers.
Okay, item 1.02, I'll handle the prayer and Mrs. Smith will follow that with the Pledge of Allegiance. Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we just want to come to you right now, Lord, with just put a hedge of protection around this system, Lord, this parish, the state, the country, Lord, that we just lower the curve of what this COVID-19 is going to do across this country, Lord, that you just be with the people that are struggling with this, and just hope that it doesn't have the impact that some are saying it's going to have on our system, Lord. Lord, we want to lift up a couple of people in our system, Coach Bo Meeks and Wendy Hendricks, Lord, that we know that you're the great physician, Lord, and that you have the power within you to heal those bodies, Lord, and we just pray that be your will, Lord. So be with this board as we make the decisions tonight of how to move the parish forward, dealing with this outbreak, Lord, and just give Mitch the discernment as we leave these walls tonight, Lord, just as the decisions that he has to make through this time period, Lord, that you just give him the discernment to make the decisions that honor you. In your precious name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Bass.
I'd like to make a motion to add discussion and action item on the sworn statement proof of loss from the insurance company on Benton Intermediate School to the agenda tonight.
So moved.
Second. We have a motion.
He's second.
Motion by Mr. Bass, a second by Mr. Cheatham.
That works.
Please vote. Motion is unanimous. We will add that as item 2.06 to our agenda. Mr. Newman.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that we add to the agenda consideration and action for a construction project that biz just came back, and with the cancellation of the B&G meeting and uncertainty of when the next will be, I'd like to add it to the agenda for the Parkway High School parking improvements for action tonight, please.
You have a motion by Mr. Newman.
Second.
Second by Ms. Smith. Please vote. Motion is unanimous. We will add that as item 2.07. Item 1.03, approval of the minutes of the regular session of the board for March 5th, 2020.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Cheatham.
Second.
Second by Mr. Newman. Please vote. Motion carries. And I'm going to take just a second to give kudos to our leadership in our parish right now. We have, what they've been put under for the last, I don't know, starting on Thursday or Friday of the week that we had off, from Coach Downey to the assistant superintendent, to everybody in this parish. What we've done is remarkable, where we're at today, I think, given the same thing without the leadership that we have, nobody would be in the situation that we're at today. Feeding our students, plan for school systems to be out, and don't forget we were on spring break last week, so they did this on their time that we're supposed to be hanging out with our family, different things like that. So I just want to take this minute to tell you guys what a great job this parish has done when you're asked to step up in a time like we've never ever seen before. Mr. Cheatham.
Thank you, Mr. Bamberg. I would just like to echo that. I'll tell you, there's been, tons and tons of phone calls and information and people wanting information quicker than maybe they thought it would be there. But I tell you what, kudos to Mr. Downey and our assistant superintendents for everything they've done to keep this process moving along. And I feel like we've been ahead of the game, and we're going to continue to be ahead of the game after tonight.
Mr. President, I'd also like to add to that I went by some of the schools today. They're doing an outstanding job. Meadowview fed over 200 people today. Other schools had 30, 40, 50, and so much, 200. So the word is out, and the thing that we're trying to do is being done. I also want to allow them the things they've done. Outstanding.
Thank you. Mr. Bass.
I got a chance to be with Superintendent Downey and Assistant Superintendent Rowland when they found out what the governor had decreed. Information was literally changing every 15 minutes on what needed to happen. I just want to testify that I got a chance to see leadership in action with what these men were able to do and how quickly they got on this problem and addressed it, and how often and how long they've met. So again, kudos to everybody in our system that's involved, but I got a chance to see it from the time it started, and even in a short period of time, in a matter of hours, they were already trying to execute a plan. So thank you for what you've done for our system, Coach. I appreciate it.
Mr. Downey.
Well, I'm sure Mr. Rowland and Dr. Boozwater would agree. We're a small part of it. Our teachers and principals are the ones that actually put the plans in action and made this thing work, and they're the ones on site, on the ground, interacting with parents and employees and setting all this up remotely. Ms. Horton has done an incredible job. Ms. Bales has been in the middle of this the whole time. Colonel Haddon, we had principals up here Saturday at 12 for about 4 hours planning. And it's really the way that our principals and our teachers and support staff have responded. They've taken this on. They care for their community and their children, and they want to do what's best. And it's been somewhat draining, tiring at times, but the people that are making it work are the ones that are at the school sites and that are truly invested every day in our students. So thank you.
And board members, as you can tell, we took Thursday's night's agenda, moved it to tonight. We don't know how much longer they'll let us meet as a group like this, so this may be our last opportunity for some period of time to come together as a group. So some of these things will have to do with how we're going to move forward. But item 2.1 is a request, approval of the revisions of the Bossier Parish School Board Policy EFAA, employee use of social media, and Bossier Parish School Board Policy 2 testing program as recommended, presented by Assistant Superintendent Jason Rowland.
Thank you, President Bamberg, Superintendent Downey, board members. We have 2 items. I thank you for pushing them up tonight. I sent this to you before we got out for spring break. Just 2 things. One is the employee use of social media policy I sent to you, and this is an effort to provide our employees with some guidelines and structure for their usage of social media. Also, we're hoping the policy protects and educates our teachers and staff on the proper social media etiquette. This comes to us from our attorneys, and Forethought has already put that into our bill as well. So thank you for your consideration there. And the other one is a policy alert that we get. This is compliance for our board to approve revisions made to Bulletin 118. And this may ultimately be a moot point, but we want to go ahead and get it in place tonight in the event we do come back.
Entertain a motion.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mr. Cheatham, second by Mr. Mr. Brotherton. Mr. What's your name?
There you go.
Mr. Bullard.
I'm on his mind.
Coach Brotherton's on my mind. Please vote. Sorry about that. I don't know who I need to apologize to.
No,
in that
you're
deal.
not. You're not.
I think I need to apologize
We
to
just
Ms.
like to
Brotherton.
pick on you.
You got a lot more to go to catch up.
Motion carries. Item 2.02, a request adoption of resolution in support of an increase in the base per pupil funding of the 2020-21 MFP. I don't know who does that.
I'll make the motion. I requested this item appear on the agenda. This is a recommended resolution from LSBA. We are requesting all school boards adopt this resolution. It's in our best interest too. I think we all realize we would have significant benefit from an increase in MFP, and it's time. It's time to have it, given the circumstances existing now and the stress that's going to place on the state budget. It may have to wait a year, but at least we'll be on record as making known the fact we do.
Do we have language to that resolution yet?
We do have that resolution, yes, sir.
Oh, this is, okay.
I'll second that.
Motion by Mr. Bullard, second by Mr. Wiggins. Please vote. Motion carries. Item 2.03, a request adoption of a resolution in opposition to any legislation that repeals, reduces, or constrains the authority of the local tax collector to collect and administer local sales and use taxes.
Once again, this is a recommended resolution from the Louisiana School Board Association. There is a move afoot to centralize all sales tax collections. And in effect, they would collect our dollars, put them in an account in Baton Rouge, and then if everything went as proposed, they'd send it right back out. But there's some hesitancy to even allow that brief interruption in the transfer of funds to occur. And so it is just setting forth our concerns that we would prefer to maintain our own local provisions for collection of sales tax. That said, I will make the motion we adopt this resolution.
Second. Motion by Mr. Bullard, second by Mr. Slack. Please vote. Motion carries. Item 2.04, a request adoption of a resolution requiring that TIPS Group Purchasing Organization be one of the options considered in the procurement of materials, equipment, and supplies as allowed under LARS 38:2212.1.
This, again, I requested this, and I think our purchasing director may want to comment. It just allows us to utilize the resources available through TIPS.
I'll explain a little bit what TIPS is. It's a GPO, a group purchasing organization, and it is full of contracts for multiple commodities, material supplies, and it's just another avenue for us to have before us when we, go out to look for something to purchase.
Mr. Bass?
I have one question. Considering not only the COVID virus and what it's doing to the health of our local economy as a nation, economy as a world, I'm also concerned about our local economy. I want to make sure that we're taking into account where we're sourcing our stuff, and as much as we can, I would like to make sure that stays locally. And I want to make sure I understand what provisions we have, what this is doing, and any money that we can keep in Bossier Parish. I want to understand how that happens. Can you comment on that for me?
Sure.
Please?
So we do make every effort to spend locally. In a nutshell, we are, for materials and supplies, anything over $30,000, we must use a contract. Whether we do our own bid and get a contract from our bid, whether we use a state contract, whether we borrow a contract from another agency. So that is one way that we can invite local vendors to participate in any solicitation that we put out there. And we publish all of that in the paper. It's on our bidding website, which is bidexpress.com. So if they're interested, those are some areas they can look at to see what opportunities we have out there. Another option we have is the local vendor statute, which was adopted by the board in 2015, that allows us to buy something from a state contract through a local vendor at a certain percentage increase. It can increase, whatever the thresholds set in place under that statute are. And we do use that local vendor option a lot for things like vehicles, janitorial supplies, maintenance supplies. And then we also use state contracts. A lot of our vendors here locally have contracts through the state of Louisiana that we use that way too.
And if I may, Ms. Douglas, we are bound, tell me if this is accurate, we are bound by state and federal guidelines as far as the way we make purchases, who we can award the contracts to, what the price has to be, and a bunch of other guidelines that non-public entities are not bound by.
Correct. When we do a bid, price is really the only determining factor. So it doesn't matter where somebody is located. It is strictly on a price consideration only for bids or award of a bid.
Mr. Cheatham?
And that would be for anything 30,000 and up, but under that, we do have the room to work with local vendors.
So anything over 30,000, and that I want to make sure that that's known, that that's an aggregate total. It is not an individual purchase. And you can't break up your purchases to skirt that threshold.
Gotcha.
So anything under 10,000 aggregately, we really are not bound by any rules or laws on how we purchase that. It is recommended that we get quotes, and we do often see quotes for a lot of the items that we procure that are under that $10,000 threshold. Anything between 10 and 30, we are mandated to get at least 3 quotes, whether it be fax, email, going to somebody's website and just building a cart. But those are informal, and we're not required to, really publish anything or do the whole bid process.
And if local businesses want to get in on that or be a part of to bid those type items, do they just need to reach out to you and so you'll?
Yes, I invite any local vendor or any vendor to come. They can either email us, stop by our office, give us a phone call, and then, like I said, we post all of our opportunities on Bid Express, and they're also published in the Bossier Press Tribune.
Okay. My last question, tips, and I believe when we were at the state school board convention, I sat in on a meeting about this, but local businesses can also sign up to try to be a vendor under this tips program, correct?
Yes. I'm not quite sure what tips process is, but anybody really can reach out to tips, and I think tips is really welcoming to any vendor reaching out to them and wanting to be set up as a vendor with them. And then on our side, we're allowed to use tips if there's a state contract that Louisiana has, and there's also a tips contract. We can use the tips contract if they're cheaper than the Louisiana state contract.
And I just think now more than ever with what's going on, if we can get our local businesses where they're in the game on these on the tips program or contacting you, anything we can do to help support small businesses, because I believe we're in for a pretty tough economical time that's coming up. And just to echo what Mr. Bass said, I'd really like to see us, as possible, get some of our local businesses involved and see if we can do business with them when it's legally possible.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President.
Mr. Bullard?
Mr. President,
Thank you, Mr. President. Just to elaborate on a couple of points, I requested this be placed on the agenda simply because it just gives, it puts another era in her quill, in her stack there. She can, it's another opportunity to save us money where she can. There is already, or there have been discussions with the TIPS organization where they are seeing interest, be it from here in the Bossier area, northwest Louisiana, be it in the river parishes, whatever the case might be. They are being asked to reach out to local vendors in those areas and solicit their participation, and they have agreed they will do so. So it's not that we're excluding anyone or that they are excluding anyone. In fact, they want the local vendors if they can get them. Quite frankly, there were two things that got my attention some time ago, and this TIPS thing's been floating around for 2 or 3 years. There were some legislative tweaks that had to be done to make it work. But the one that really got my attention was in the a matter of school buses. They go out and they don't bid 10, 15, 30, 40 buses. They bid 500 buses at a pop. Well, we all know that's gonna get the manufacturer's attention and could be a significant, and I'm told it's a significant cost saving. So something like that, we're getting into some pretty big numbers then. And it's just something that's there. She can use it if appropriate.
Okay, Mr. Wiggins?
Thank you, Mr. President. My question has been answered. I've long been a proponent for local businesses, but Mr. Buller kind of had the same thing in mind I did. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Bass?
One last question. You talked about a resolution that was passed by the Bossier Parish School Board in 2015, where we are open for business and we're trying to do business locally. Can you give me just a little more detail on that so I understand what advantages we may be giving to those businesses that are local to try and do business with them, please?
Yes. So the statute that I'm referring to is revised statute 39:1710, and it states that you may purchase, or an agency may purchase from a local vendor an exact item that is listed on a state contract at no more than 3%, 5%, or 7%, depending on the total dollar amount of that purchase. And so that includes, transportation or delivery, shipping, and all of that. And so that allows us to take a state contract that may be somewhere else in the state, or, awarded to a vendor somewhere else in the state, but we have a vendor here who can get us that same item. Usually they meet the state contract price, or they can beat it. And so it just allows us to purchase it in the parish, in our parish, instead of going to the other parish, wherever that vendor is.
Thank you.
Ms. Douglas, is there anything that allows it to be like products, or it has to be the exact product?
For this particular statute, it has to be the same exact item.
Okay.
Now, when I do a bid, that has to be a similar or equal item.
Okay. All right. Mr. Bullard,
I'll make the motion that we approve this resolution.
motion by Mr. Bullard,
Second.
second by Ms. Brotherton. Please vote. Motion carries. Item 2.05, a request and update, COVID-19. Got some board members. We'll skip item 2.05 and come back to that. 2.06.
Okay.
Take care of the business first.
Mr. Rogers, can you give us an update, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. President, Mr. Superintendent, and board members, as you know, it's rare for me to ask to add an agenda item last minute, and so I appreciate your indulgence in allowing us to do this. As I shared with the board in the past, our next step in our claim process on the property insurance is to have the proof of loss
And of course, you all have a copy of what it looks like in front of you, and it's also in board docs along with supporting information. But based on what is known at this particular point, the total claim is valued at just over 1.3 million. There will be some changes. We think that's plus or minus 5% what the final number will be. And it can be amended two ways. Number one, the claim could cost less than that. And if so, of course, the insurance company is not going to pay us more than what the cost is, minus our deductible. Or it could cost more. And of course, with additional documentation, it can be adjusted upward as well. There are a couple of other items that aren't included. The main one is the contents, which will be a nominal amount. But I think Ms. Bamberg is still working with the school on that contents list, and that'll be our next thing to turn in. So you'll see that the insurance company is charging us, of course, our $100,000 deductible. And then as far as the recoverable depreciation, or sometimes called replacement cost holdback, it's $205,212. And so what that means is let's assume this number is the actual number. Then after we complete repairs, we get that amount on the backside once the work is completed. If you authorize, first of all, if you accept this offer and authorize the superintendent to sign this tonight, then we will be receiving $1,004,488.50. And typically that would come in the form of a check. Because of the COVID-19 and all that, we're probably going to ask for funds to be wired. But the reason why we wanted to get this on the agenda is it was the legal counsel's opinion that this needed to be accepted by the board and that you needed to authorize the superintendent to sign it. And so it's for that reason that I'm presenting it tonight. And I'll be glad to entertain any questions.
I'll make a motion to accept the Benton Middle School proof of loss from RSUI Indemnity Company and authorization of superintendent to execute this form, as well as subsequent proof of loss adjustments.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Bass.
Hold on, I think we got.
Just before, because this item was added, before we move on the action item, we need to ask for public comment.
Oh, do we have any public comment surrounding the proof of loss statement in Benton Intermediate? None being heard, we'll accept the motion by Mr. Bass and a second by Mr. Wiggins. Please vote. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Good job.
We like when you bring us $1 million checks instead of asking us to spend money, but.
It's in the wire.
Item 2.07, a discussion in lieu of a Building and Grounds Committee meeting. Or
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. I didn't know if I needed to defer to the
No.
chairman. If you would, please. So in light of B&G meetings being canceled and with the current state of affairs, we don't know when we will convene again. This is something that had been being worked on over the last few months and weeks, and back in February this went out to bid, and the bids actually came back this morning at 8:58, as you can see. And in order to maximize our funds on this, I asked for this to be put on the agenda tonight. This falls under the bid law requirements, but Mr. Roger and his team did go ahead and get 3 bids for this project. This is for parking out at Parkway High School, as we all know, has been an absolute mess over the years. I would like to make a motion that we earmark funds for this. I think is what we need to do. We need to do final approval for the funds to come out of the B&G. And with that, I'd like to do the concrete base bid plus alternate in the total of $141,360 for this project. And it is my understanding it's possible that this can be done during the shutdown. And I do recognize the name as a Bossier Parish contractor. So I'd like to make a motion that we approve this. Mr. Self, I know you have something.
Same issue, public comment.
Oh, public comment concerning, we have board comment. Any public comment concerning Parkway High School?
I think Stacy.
Stacy?
I just want to publicly clarify those were quotes, not bids,
Yeah.
for legal
Sorry.
issues.
Oh, okay. Ms. Brotherson?
Mr. Newman, would you just kind of tell us where this is going to be on campus? I have just
Sure.
curiosity. I'd like
This
know
is
where it's
going to be near the field house and the track. So right now, for about 5 sports and everything, it's on the northwest corner of the property. It's where we currently have an open field. We have light poles out there in the middle of grass because we ran out of concrete and money when they built the school. So as you approach the field house, there's a grass parking lot to your right, and that is what will be paved. It's
kind of between the baseball field and the...
yes, yes, yeah,
Just north of the field house.
just north of the field house.
There's field house parking lot and just north of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, and we're still not going to pave everything that's open out there, but this will cover about 70% of what should have been done originally.
Okay, let me ask you this. How many parking spots will this create?
Mr. Roger, about 75, is that right?
50 total.
50 total.
50 additional?
This is 50 total parking spots, new dumpster pad area, and a sidewalk connecting the west side of the field house
And then
from
the-
the parking to the sidewalk.
And then the removal of the islands that are out there right now that you have to drive around. I think once we remove the islands and the new parking, it will be about 75
This
total.
quote was to fill the islands. You want them removed?
Yeah, well, they're removing them and putting
That's right,
concrete
they don't
over
have
them.
curbs, I got you.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's part of that. That's what you said.
Mr. Bullard?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just clarification. Mr. Newman, you indicated this would come from B and G funds. I think you meant it'll come from your set-aside bond.
Yes, I'm
funds.
sorry. That is
Thank you, sir.
correct. Sorry.
Just for clarification. Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification.
We have a motion by
Second.
Mr. Newman,
Second.
second by Mr. Cheatham. Please vote. Motion carries. They'll be very happy about that when they return to school.
Thank you all.
Everybody have a
How
parking
long will
spot.
that take?
Less than 30 days is the estimate.
All right, now we'll go back to item 2.05, a request and update from COVID-19. Initially, I called this meeting to just kind of get some, there was information coming in at enormous rates. Mitch probably can tell you how that was coming in so fast, and I was like, we just need to convene as a board, get some information, have some opportunities to answer some questions, ask some questions, probably more so than answer them. But since then, and once again, kudos to the team, because I think there's a lot fewer questions. There'll still be some questions tonight, but there's a lot fewer questions on how we're moving forward, because the incredible job that this parish has done organizing this in such a short frame of time, especially with most people being off, so we couldn't even communicate with administrators sometimes during their spring break and different things like that. So one item that we do need to take care of is, because we may not be able to convene again as a board, we do have to, declaration of public emergency, which will give superintendent the ability and authority to make some decisions to continue business in the parish until we come back. I think it's we have a note until further notice. I think it's how that reads you got that in the email fashion, so hopefully you got an opportunity to read that. I think it makes perfect sense, and I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Cheatham, second by Mr. Bullard. Any questions? Please vote. Motion carries, and that'll go a long way to helping you make decisions as we move forward through this time frame. Are there any questions? I mean, the discussion part, are there any questions concerning? We'll get some information first, and maybe some questions to be answered.
Mr. President.
We've been in daily contact with the LDOE and the Bessie, and there's been a lot of movement on their part, along with the governor. Today we learned through a conference call that the LDOE, along with Bessie sent out a suggestion or request yesterday to the governor to waive several laws and statutes, things like compulsory number of minutes, number of work days for teachers. Those were signed by the governor. On the LDOE, and that's all subject to, well, let me cover the list first, and then I'll come back to what it's subject to. Accountability will be waived this spring, so there will be no SPS or district performance score. Teacher evaluations have been waived. Graduation requirements such as the passing of certain EOCs at the end of the year have been waived. Obviously, the ACT test that was scheduled for today has been impacted. They're trying to set another date in the early part of June so that those seniors that are going off to school have an opportunity to take it again and may eventually qualify for TOPS through it. Promotion of 4th and 8th graders has been waived through LEAP and iLEAP, and then, like I said earlier, compulsory minutes have been waived. The governor is in total agreement. The last part of the process is for the U.S. Department of Education to agree to waive all of these requirements, which, based on the current situation we're in and the country as a whole and the world as a whole, I cannot see the U.S. Department of Education not agreeing that all of these things need to be waived and allow for us to what was the phrase that's going around? Reduce the curve, or flatten the curve. And I'd be glad to answer any questions about what we're doing as a parish. I think that most of you know that teachers are working from their home remotely. They're using Google Classroom that was set up prior to provide lessons. Schools are being staffed with the term I've been using is skinny staffs, but scaled back. Anytime I can use the word skinny, I try to use it. They've been scaled back greatly. Mr. Rowland, Mr. Roger, Colonel Haddon, Dr. Bourgeois, Ms. Holly, several of us have been working to identify those locations, schools and centers, determine the minimum amount of people on site, and try to put those things in place. Currently, and Mr. Bamberger's referenced this, that's currently what we're doing. All of this is subject to change depending on new information that's coming out every day, and I'd be glad to answer any questions in reference to any of those subjects. Now,
Mr. Wiggins?
Mr. President, I just have a comment. COVID-19. We know you're going to do your due. But I want you to know that America the beautiful. We're not afraid of you. We're not crazy. We know you're bad to the bone. But when we finish kicking your behind, you're going to leave us alone.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Cheatham?
My question, based off of the email that the governor sent out that we all saw, it sounds like our school year is done and over if the feds sign off on what Bessie and what the governor have said. I guess my question is, where are we at on maybe on dual enrollment? I know obviously we partner with BPSB on that, and do we have any info, or are we still kind of working through that?
Dual enrollment in AP is continuing. Advanced placement is still overseeing those programs along with dual enrollment through the local and state universities. Those programs are continuing online. They were already set up to provide for that. The effort is to give every possible opportunity for those students to finish those courses. So they're probably the least impacted as far as continuing instruction and new material and information.
And that was a personal privilege question. My daughter was asking about AP testing pretty regularly. So,
Dr. Bourgeois, do you have anything to add on that?
No, sir. I know they canceled the April ACT. and made some other modifications.
In the conversations I've had in the last 4 or 5 days, the last 2 days especially, the intent of waiving all the requirements were from the information I'm getting, were based on the fact that even if we do return in April, it's going to be a small window of time to get all those testing requirements done. Tremendous amount of pressure on students. This is the period of time that we want everybody to be able to do what they have to do to keep themselves safe. And removing those requirements was an effort to ease the tension and anxiety. I can't say for sure that we won't be back in school April 13th or some other time later in April or maybe even May. There have been some states, Kansas, as recently as 10 minutes ago, closed for the year. So I think trying to predict what's going to happen is difficult, but I don't want our students to not continue to take advantage of the opportunities they have online and through printed material and other sources that we're continually adding to on a daily basis, even an hourly basis, and I don't want them to let down their guard too much, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Thank you.
Ms. Brotherton?
Yeah, I just have a comment, kind of a question. I'm aware that the principals, the administrators at each school are asked to be there every day. Is there going to be a consideration later on for them to maybe shift off where they're not all there?
They're currently taking shifts.
Are they? Okay.
Yes, ma'am. And the effort in the last 2 days was to try to get all of these things in place and set up. And our expectation is, as this thing evolves and we become better at managing these different moving parts, that there'll be less and less and less of a presence on the campus.
Right. Right.
Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Yes, ma'am.
That was a question.
Mr. Bullard?
Thank you, Mr. President. To follow up on what Mr. Cheatham said, and he shared that with us in a text yesterday, and at that time, and I'll reiterate, I concurred with his assessment. If you read closely the Bessie letter to the governor, it's pretty straightforward. They haven't thrown the towel in, but they're saying let's get it in hand. And the word I received yesterday evening, because I followed up on once he brought it to our attention, there is a definite consideration being afforded the possibility, the distinct possibility of just doing a wrap. This will be it. Because if we have any uptick, and I think common sense says we will see some uptick in these cases. And if there is, that's going to push us another 2 weeks down the road, and we'll be into May, maybe June. So I'm sure Mr. Downey and all of our administrative personnel that's in the back of their mind that, okay, we take care of today, but we must be mindful that we may have to wrap this thing up.
Yes, Superintendent.
I just want to respond to that. We had a principals meeting yesterday and we talked about the possibility, and at that time we explained it in this way, that Bessie and the LDOE were requesting waivers on certain parts or certain requirements, of which I've listed several, in an effort to create a path so that if this has to be extended, they can do that without worrying about any of those other deadlines. When I communicated the possibility that school may be closed for the rest of the year, we had principals that were visibly and emotionally upset because they care so much about their students and they want to see them again and be able to interact with them. And that was part of what I was referencing earlier when I was responding to your appreciation for what we've done. And then once again, I want to say that our principals and teachers are on the front lines, and they love our children. And most people would see this as a windfall for being off of work or out of the schools. But the lion's share of our people are upset that they can't interact with their students on a daily basis.
Especially those seniors.
Mr. Bass.
I have two questions. Ms. Brotherton brought up one. Those seniors, I understand we don't want to jeopardize anyone's health in getting in a big group, but I just want to make sure that we're going to make every effort, if there is a time where we can get a graduation ceremony together in the future, they will have an opportunity to walk and graduate. I've read so many seniors that haven't, they didn't know it was going to be the last time they walked the halls of their high school. So I just want to go on record, if we can, that we are going to make every effort to try and allow them a graduation ceremony if at all possible. And then my second question, and this may be for Captain Johnson, I'm just trying to find out the SRO program maybe this week and going in, how we're utilizing that program as we go.
I can respond to that, and Captain may want to add to it. They're working at the feeding sites. I think there's 17, at least 17, probably more than that are involved in that. There's some other plans in place to potentially, if we got some legal legal requirements that we have to navigate. Feeding program is going very well. Yesterday there were 1,670 meals served. Today there were over 1,700 served. We have had many people reach out to volunteer to help in that effort. Ms. Bales and Ms. Horton have been working hand in hand to address those needs, and Captain Johnson and our SROs are very closely involved in all of that as well. But that will continue to evolve. That was a priority with the LDOE today, even beyond the waivers that were being requested for all of the other requirements of the schools. The feeding program was the topic of focus and concern to make sure that our students are being fed and are safe.
And I want to thank Captain Johnson and his team, Bossier Parish Sheriff's Office, for everything you guys have done. You've been out, you've been visible, you've been out trying to help deliver those meals to those kids that need them the most. So I want to go on record of thanking you and your team and the Bossier Parish Sheriff's Office for doing that. So thank you very much.
I want to hop on that too, because my visits today to the schools, they were there visible, and in fact, inside were helping move the tables in one of the schools, doing all they could. So I think it's a great thing, Mr. Superintendent and Captain Johnson. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much. I also want to say, let the board know, our crossing guards, just to throw a little something out there to those people. Those are sometimes it's a thankless job. We had to get together very quickly to try to get a plan together, because we obviously have walk-up students that come to our schools, and they work together as a team every single day in this community. They got together, Miss Margaret Davenport, she's kind of helps me head those individuals up, but they're at their locations helping students across the road for our feeding program, and Ms. Horton has done a wonderful job. Obviously, we're going to be a resource to you guys on behalf of Sheriff Whittington and all that, so we appreciate the opportunity to serve. That's the biggest thing.
And then the last question, and I'll hush. I've had a lot of people reach out to me and others asking where they can volunteer. Is there a place, and our community just has a big heart and wants to help where they can, is there a place where they can go and find a need that needs to be met and possibly volunteer to help? Is there any place that they can do that, or a number they can call, or anything of that nature?
I think the feeding programs would be the most likely place, and they're like I said earlier, there are things that we're trying to get answered, questions we're getting answered as far as liabilities and what protections we have to have in place, what vetting needs to be done prior to people getting involved in those. Ms. Bales, can you add to that or correct anything that I've said?
Ms. Georgette Price, our military services manager, and I are working together, and we have been having conversations with North Point Community Church because they have reached out to us. They already help our homeless and migrant families with the backpack program. And so we've been involved in conversations with them about picking up the backpack program and being able to make sure that those children are still served on weekends. And they would be able to absorb volunteers who would like to be able to help them continue that program. And by helping, that would include collecting food for those backpacks. We currently know that at least 350 plus children receive those weekend backpacks. We think that that number is actually underreported. We're still gathering information, but they are looking at assembling those backpacks for us and also helping us distribute them.
So at this point, they need to reach out to
North Point Community Church, yes, sir.
Thank you.
I mean, do they need people to volunteer to send food?
I'm sorry?
Do they need someone to donate food?
They absolutely would welcome that, yes.
You take it to that church?
Yes.
And Sonia, I don't know if Simple Church has reached out to you, but I know they also are, had put out, I think they're going to try to pack 10,000 boxes this weekend to pass out for that same type thing over the weekend. So
Yeah, that would be a huge help. Anything that we can do to be able to ease this burden on our families and be able to make sure that they are covered through the weekend when our feeding sites are not open.
that's what their goal is.
More comments?
I just have one.
Ms. Horton? I'll stop you early because I know you were probably one of the first ones that had to act and had to have something in place for Monday morning. So I know that didn't come easy and didn't come without a lot of help, but I think that was probably the greatest thing that the parish did was Monday morning, man, we're ready to rock, and I didn't think we'd be ready to go. I'm down there visiting with superintendent and how are we going to handle this, and so you guys rose to the occasion, your teams, and it's incredible what you guys did.
Well, thank you so much. I have to give credit to my team. I got on the phone as soon as all this happened, and we met on Saturday, and I was texting my central office team, and I said, hey, we need to meet. This is what we need to do. We've got to be ready to go on Monday. And within an hour, we were in the office. We met till late Saturday night, and then all of our cafeteria managers, all of our workers, they really have rallied to be able to feed our kids. And so they care about them just as much as the teachers do, and they've just stepped up so that we can feed the kids, because that's really what is important to them, and they rely on us at school, and now that we're not open, we're happy to be able to provide that. So I really have to give the credit to my team and to my workers, because they've done it, and they've done it with a great attitude. So I'm very proud of them. I wanted to just clarify the numbers. Yesterday was our first day. It started off rainy. We served 858 kids, which means we gave out 16 meals. So 1,716 meals yesterday, because we're giving out a breakfast and a lunch at the same time. Today, after the media coverage and kind of people were getting, word that we were doing this, we served 1,468 students today, and that was 2,936 meals. So that was a big, almost double, and we're hoping that that will continue to grow. We are trying to make our shifts for our workers as short as possible, and we're doing it in 2 different shifts to minimize the contact and that we have, less than 10 around. If people want to volunteer at specific sites to help give out food, like to be on the curbside, that would be great. If they wanted to do that, they can call my office, and I can help to coordinate that. They can, I can make a Google Sheet sign up that they can just sign up for each site, for however many days, for however many hours or hour that they want to come and help.
Ms. Horton, how is your capacity to provide more meals than that? I mean, are we at our tops right now? We got some,
We normally serve 15,000 meals every school day.
Okay.
So we can rally. We can, if we have the people, we will feed them. If they come, we will feed them.
Okay, thank you.
And this may be a question for Colonel Haddon. I saw some reports also that we were taking some buses and delivering some meals and maybe some less remote areas, or was that just an idea? Okay, I may be overstepping.
Was it good idea?
I have two things. There are a lot of things that we're restricted by, and the list is really too long to go into now, but that would be one of them as far as the FDA is concerned and the guidelines that they have to follow in child nutrition. But I just want to underscore the fact how important your department is magnified, even especially now, and what service that they provide to our students and how important that service is. You know, the basic needs, food, shelter, and clothing, without those, nothing else really matters. And I think that is truly magnified at this point in time. You should be tremendously proud of your people and what they've been able to do. And we just are all grateful that they love our students as much as they do and want to provide as much as they can.
Well, thank you, sir. They are. I mean, I'm very proud of them, and I've been their cheerleader the whole way.
Thank you, Ms. Horton.
Thank you.
Any more questions or concerns around the COVID deal?
I have a question, but I
Okay.
don't really know if it is around that. Since we're out of school, and I don't know if this is even possible, I came to my head today, these projects that we have left from the bond money, and we're getting the bids back soon, is there any way, since no one's in the schools, that those projects could start earlier? Is that a possibility?
Nope, here we go.
Until we get a definitive answer about how long this is going to last, it would probably be a leap of faith to do anything permanent right now. And
Okay.
So we had our first pre-bid meeting today, and I informed all the contractors that showed up that as of today, everything would continue as we had it scheduled initially. But tomorrow, there could be a completely different set of instructions that I would release. You know, we may be shut down at any time. We don't really know.
Right.
So I am just really letting them know, as of right now, this is what our plan is.
Everything is moving as scheduled.
Okay. Well, it's a thought.
If there is another need for action, Mr. Self, is there a way for this board to meet remotely at all, or?
Not for any action. Not right now. As of now, the way it's stated is that the meetings do have to be in person. There's no.
So I'll take this time just to tell the board, thank you so much for coming out. I think and the employees that showed up here, I mean, we thought we were going to be talking to each other, and all the department heads that care enough to come to this meeting, and people involved in this parish that come to this meeting, that y'all are the reason that we've handled this so awesome so far. I mean, it's been extraordinary to me what we've done in this parish. So, and board, thank you for showing up tonight, giving Mitch the ability to continue on business in our absence, I guess, for a little bit of time. And we know that we're turning over some good hands. And with that, we'll go to 3.01, superintendent's comments, announcements.
well, I'm just going to repeat what I've already said. The governor closed schools until April 13th. We're getting daily updates. I'm going to try to give you as much information as I get. Some of you get it faster than I do. I think the Bessie resolution was forwarded to me by one of y'all, so maybe you have some inside information I don't have. But we will continue to do everything we can to provide for our students and wait for direction from the state and federal governments, and hopefully, God willing, we can flatten the curve and keep everybody in Bossier safe.
Thank you, Superintendent Downey. Mr. Newman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to not let the night go by without recognizing a couple of our high schools and their basketball teams and their success. I wanted everybody to know, I know we have a YouTube audience out there as well. Congratulations to the Benton High School girls 5A state basketball champions, and also the Bossier High School boys basketball team. Congratulations to both of those groups. I know Bossier High School faced some immense adversity this year, and my hat's off to Coach Bohannon, Coach Thrash, the principal there, and that entire program. And I wanted to make sure we recognize those guys and gals on their success on the court and congratulate them. And hopefully, once we get all this back going, Ms. Bales can get them in here for some good news and hang a medal around their neck. So thank you, Mr. President.
You're welcome. Item 4.01, adjournment. Motion by Mr. Slack, second by, who was it? Mr. Bullard, please vote.
Billy Joe, did you vote? Ms. Brothers? Ms. Brothers, did you vote?
I thought I did.
Well, you know, if it's, I mean, we're not going to come back to it.
Motion carries. Meeting adjourned.
How do I even?